Amazing, Tom. Thanks for joining me. It's great to have you.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, Alex. Thank you so much for having me, and for setting all this up. Actually, you're the one to be instrumental behind getting this whole thing going. So no, it's great.
Oh, you and me both. So look, it's been great working with you on this. So for everyone watching, we're starting a new series that is focused on AI within the built environment, and we're going to have a lot of interviews where Tom and I will be interviewing different people within the built environment ultimately, and talking to them about how they are implementing AI, how they're using it, where they see the biggest impacts being. And I know from some of the conversations we already had, there's been some amazing sort of tangents into different spaces and all over the place. So it's and it's been fascinating though, some really good conversations so far. So watch this space for these interviews coming out on a regular basis through Cherry Pick People and the Red Foundation, who are partnering for this series. So yeah, just a quick intro from me. I'm Alex Whiffian. I'm the co-founder and managing director of Cherry Pick People. We're a consultancy that specialises in talent consultancy for prop tech and real estate space and the wider built environment. We partner with purpose-led business leaders and innovators to help them build culturally rich and diverse teams. Easy for me to say today. But maybe Tom, you can give us a quick intro to the Red Foundation and what they are all about.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Tom Shrive. I've been involved in both AI and the real estate sector now for many years, maybe since at least 2014, I guess. So I don't know, it's 10 years, I guess, reasonable time. Back before AI was cool, or in fact before AI worked properly, I think it's fair to say. The reason why I guess we're here today is because I'm also chair of the Red Foundation AI committee. And just a little bit about the Red Foundation. The Red Foundation essentially is the real estate data foundation. It's completely volunteer led, so it's a non-profit, and we don't get paid for our time. Really, what we're trying to do is just bring together some like-minded people who can really support the ethical use, the optimal use, the kind of the best practice, I guess, when it comes to data standards across the real estate industry. And obviously, data being so intertwined with AI, they felt the need to launch the AI committee, and that's obviously what I'm a part of. And we've got a team of about 12, 13 volunteers as well who are sitting on that panel and really helping to drive awareness of AI across the sector, the real estate sector, but not just awareness, but also actively kind of engage with the sector, through providing things like case studies, examples of how AI is being used. And obviously that's what we're trying to do here with these, is to hopefully showcase some kind of, I think the kind of the vibe that we're taking with these, and stop me if I'm wrong, Alex, but is to kind of get more discussions happening around what people are actually doing with AI and what problems they're actually facing, and maybe even some of those like slightly more existential questions that occasionally get thrown in about what does it actually mean for us in the next 5-10 years. But yeah.
Well, exactly, and it's been like very insightful so far with the few that we've done, and we've got some great ones lined up as well. So it's really very interesting, and to get the take of these different people within the space who are utilizing it day to day. So but today I want to talk to you, Tom, about how you're doing it, and and so maybe you can give us a little bit of a rundown of your role within the built environment, and maybe where AI fits into your day, what your day-to-day activities involve, and then we can talk about the AI.
Sure. So I kind of wind back a little bit. So in 2015, I guess, probably 2016, I guess, but kind of we were doing work before that. So in 2016, I founded a company called Ask Porter, and essentially what that company, what we set out to achieve was to use AI to streamline, automate the maintenance journey for property managers. So we ended up kind of starting off in residential, and then kind of we slowly morphed into facilities, largely because it was a scale thing. Because at that time, um, AI needed quite a lot of data to be able to kind of really do the job. So it kind of that was a kind of a sensible pivot. Whereas I think residential, certainly in the UK, maybe less in the US and other geographies, but in the UK, it tends to be smaller operators. And when we talk about AI, kind of maybe the data set wasn't there for the smaller operators, so it made sense for us to kind of move and look more into the commercial, the larger operators, basically. So yeah, so I did that. Sold that company about 2 years ago to a German facility management company. And along the way, to be fair, we had some great investors. Google was an investor, James Caan of Dragon's Den, fame, and people
Yeah.
like that, and Pi Labs and Phaserbot. So they were all very supportive along that journey as well. It wasn't the easiest journey, to be frank. As I said, it was kind of before AI really started to work, I think it's fair to say. And there's a fundamental kind of shift that's happened with the technology itself, transformer technology from Google. Don't have to go too deep into it, but obviously that happened kind of about midway through that journey. So now we're starting to see the benefits of that kind of technology breakthrough, and that's why AI is now significantly more capable than it was then. So that's kind of my journey, so that now leads me to so I'm now working as chief product officer, chief product and AI officer, but that's a long mouthful, at a company called Aduvo. Aduvo so we look after about 1.2, 1.3 million, yeah, something around that, properties across the UK largely, but we are now expanding into Canada and Australia.
Amazing.
In a nutshell, the business was founded to provide out of hours and emergency support to those properties. So if you're a property manager, especially relevant now. I don't want to age this podcast, but I don't want to age, sorry, this piece. But we're coming up to Christmas, right? And the Christmas, essentially, Aduvo take over these kind of times, obviously, when they clock off at 4 p.m. as well. And provide that service white labeled as if it's them. So obviously that gives us a unique insight across the business. I think we've probably one of the largest portfolios actually in the country of kind of rented properties, or leased properties.
Mm.
And that brings unique data challenges, that we're finding some really strong benefits actually that AI is able to deliver us as a business, both operationally, but mainly from a customer service point of view. All this really, yeah, I don't want to go into it too much, but everything we do as a business obviously is about making sure we deliver an excellent service to the customer, right? Otherwise, there's no point in a business existing. And
No,
ultimately, that's what the AI needs to do. So that's what we found. Whether it is sorting out and automating back office functions, or whether it is actually chatbots and AI assistants on the front side that are directly talking to customers, it all ultimately benefits the customer. So that's what we've been doing a lot of AI to try and leverage that power to improve that customer experience.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was my next question: is what opportunities do you see for AI within your field? So, I mean, obviously, the automation in the back office sort of thing, and with the chatbots, are these online, in terms of text chat in that respect, or is it actually verbal now? I mean, I've seen some maps which chat to you properly, speak to you, which are, you wouldn't know if they're a human or not. It's almost like my best friend. That says a lot about me, maybe. But
Yeah, can't go down the pub with you though.
no,
It's
yeah.
it's it's yeah, no, look, it's quite mind blowing. I think where we're at right now. I think yeah, there's a couple of things there. So I guess opportunities in the space when we look at Aduvo as a company, I think we're going to see we've got loads of stuff in the pipeline that we're working on. So the first thing is an AI assistant. Has been up to date, purely web based and chat based. So if someone calls in, we send an SMS, they can link that, and then they're into the chat. They can share photos, and basically the AI will triage issues. The interesting thing about this is Adjuvo has been going now for, I don't know, 15 years. I should know that, but it's a long time. And the company's got a lot of knowledge in their scripts, right? So these scripts um, to try and triage property maintenance problems are extensive, and
Mm,
they've been battle tested. So what we've been able to
mm.
do is to train the AIs on that, because obviously, how AI models are trained. They're trained on all the internet's information, maybe illegally or legally dubious,
Yeah.
but they have been trained. They have been trained on all that information, um, and but the interesting thing is specialist data like stuff that Adjuvo has specifically related to their scripts is not publicly available and not in the domain, and therefore this is a unique piece of value that we can bring to the AI models, that really sets us apart. And I think that's what we really look for, is that kind of how AI can combine with our knowledge and our experience and our distribution and add significant value for our customers. So that's been really interesting. That's been live now for about 3 months across all of our lines. Opt-in, we haven't been pushing it on anyone. We were saying, hey, do you want to speak to this? And for us, it's been a really big win, especially for when we get absolutely hammered, when it's like, when there's a storm or something.
Yeah.
Invariably,
Spikes
demand
of,
goes up through the roof. You can't staff up for spikes like that, no matter
no,
how
no,
hard you try.
no.
So to be able to give that option basically means that the emergencies can be handled in one direction. The ones that are maybe not quite the emergencies can kind of be deflected a little bit. And that's been a huge, huge, huge win for us in terms of, in terms of kind of deflection rate. We're looking at about 15% on average. So that's 15% opting in to speak to these AIs. And you're right.
I
What we're
know.
now launching is our voice. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say I know myself when I'm dealing with the customer service of various whatever services. I'm like, where's the chatbot? I just want to talk. Just quickly get through that rather than sitting on the phone or whatever. You just go. I know I can. This is straightforward. I just need to get this information or just fire through this quickly.
I think the issue there, and that's a really good point I think you make there, because the issue there is you really, you're really, it's potluck at the moment when you speak to a chatbot, what kind of chatbot you get, because you've still got the companies selling their old legacy ones, which are like decision tree. Oh, I didn't understand what you said. Please repeat that.
Yeah.
Or like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember back in the days when you were calling up a cinema and you'd be like, hi, what cinema are you calling for? And you'd be like,
Yeah.
Northampton. And you'd be like,
Yeah.
I think you're calling for Cambridge. You're like, no, I'm not calling for
Yeah.
Cambridge. Obviously, I don't know how did
Listen
you get
to
that?
me.
It was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was incredibly frustrating. But we're a long way from that now. And I think, but you still are taking that potluck when you do speak to a chatbot. But all I can say is those chatbots are going to die out. They're still in operation, but they're going to die out over the next couple of years. So if you're looking at stuff as a potential buyer, or as someone who's looking to develop this stuff, look at what's available now. Don't have that mindset of, chatbots are terrible, because they're
Oh, I
very
feel the
different
opposite.
things now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe you've been very lucky and had some great examples, but a lot of, definitely, to be honest, a lot of clients I speak to are like, no, we don't want
Not
that,
doing it.
because my experience is trying to call up a cinema line and trying to repeat, the name of the cinema 10 times and you don't get anywhere.
Yeah, this customer service basically is what they're worried about, is that that's going to fall through the floor. But obviously, with the advances we go, it's improving what our normal experience.
Well, I mean, look, they can't tell. We've had to introduce in the testing for the voice bot, for the voice AI assistant. We've had to introduce, obviously, this is only in testing, but obviously when it goes to kind of live version production, this disclaimer will be there anyway. But we've had to say, look, this is an AI, because the problem is people go, I don't believe it, blah, 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 and then they start asking stupid questions of it. They're like, okay, what am I wearing? You're like, "Oh, okay, this is a frustrating level of test, for the
Yeah,
AI.
yeah,
But the reality is, it's a great sign when it's that good that they can't tell the difference. Um,
yeah,
yeah. The trick with all of this stuff, though, again, coming back to the data piece, is making sure that the data is, are connected to the data, because it doesn't matter actually if it's a human or an AI. If the human
no, no,
doesn't have the data, or the human doesn't have the authority, it's equally as frustrating. You'll get through and you'll be like, oh, I can't do that. Computer says no. And you're like, well,
yeah,
let me speak to someone higher up that does have that. And it's the same thing
Yeah.
with AI. It's making sure that it has the right permissions, the right access, and the data's good. Yeah.
At the risk of going off script a bit, because I know we've got a few questions lined up, but you sort of mentioned about obviously the importance of the data being there, and with Evo, you've got loads of quality data that's been battle tested and that sort of stuff. If AI, in a broader sense, is utilizing the whole of the internet to learn, there's a lot of rubbish out there. I mean, that's certainly come up with a lot of quality, a lot of the conversations I had about obviously importance of quality data to train your AI. I just wonder if ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever is learning off reams of internet with just no value in there at all, and it's rubbish or it's wrong or whatever. Where is it fact checked?
Yeah, I mean that's the problem, right? So that's what's leading to lots of hallucinations and things like that, because there's been like a ingest the data and then kind of well, so it's largely been unsupervised learning, which is kind of when supervised learning is like if you imagine you have a teacher in a class pointing out things, this is good, this is bad, this is blah 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 blah, and then unsupervised is like you go in
It's all
and
the
then
stuff.
you learn, you just read books, right? But the problem is if you do that, even a human, you could end up, reading stuff that maybe isn't correct, and then you end up like Elon Musk down some kind of like rabbit hole of like conspiracy theories and things like that. Not saying that it is or isn't, but yeah, I don't want to upset any fans. I think he's a very smart guy. But that if you don't get the signposting from a teacher or something, then it can it's very hard to differentiate what's good data, what's bad data, what's good information, what's bad information. And I think
Mm.
we are seeing that now as we move into like the next stage of models where the veracity of the data becomes a lot more important. So what kind of data it is becomes a lot more important than any data. Give me all data to train these things.
Mhm.
And yeah, we're starting to see, even OpenAI and all these different models are starting to they use reinforcement learning. So that's kind of this is good data. This is so when you see after you train the model, then you have a period of training the model further. So you kind of train it on all the data, and then at the moment they use kind of humans to then go through and be like good response, bad response, good response, bad
Yeah.
response. So that's how it gets to the point of kind of reinforcement learning where it starts to sound really good, but still the veracity, there's no layer that says this is true information, this is wrong information, and that's a problem. I'm sure we'll be
Mm.
fixing it in the near future, but yeah, it's still an
The challenge
outstanding
there,
problem.
isn't it? I mean,
It is. There's ways you can mitigate that. There's ways you can mitigate it in production, but yeah.
on that topic of challenges, I mean, what challenges have you encountered when you're incorporating AI? That's specifically what you're doing right now. I mean,
Hmm.
what challenges have you faced in your processes in doing that?
Ah, that's a very big question that we could be here for the next like, or definitely take up the rest of the session. But oof. So there's also the other stuff I do. So I do Agivo kind of 4 days a week, and then I've got one day where I work for a company called Machines for Construction, and we're building robots to automate construction tasks. So I've if there's a challenge in deploying AI into production environments, I've faced it in some way across hardware, software, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we talk about kind of machine vision, like we talk about kind of reinforcement learning. We talk about challenges, generative AI, etc., etc. So if we look at the generative AI side of stuff, maybe start there. Um,
Mm.
that's the new stuff. That's the
That's the
the
big wow.
OpenAI. Yeah. That's been really tricky. I think the main challenge with that is it's like you said, it's been trained on everything on the internet. The challenge is to tell it not what to say. So the challenge is to tell it like, don't do that. That's not you. You're not. you're not a space pilot or whatever. Like you are an AI that's supposed to be just answering property maintenance things, and giving it instructions and getting it to listen effectively to the instructions is a challenge, because certainly it's getting better now. The context windows are there, but when we first started, it kind of just like a child that if you give it too much instructions, it's like, I'm going to ignore most of that. I'm only going to do this one. And you're like, why? Why just pick on that one? But as you start to understand how it works and why it does that, it's actually getting better. And what I have found now is, bizarrely, if you give it codified instructions rather than just in natural language, if you actually give
Yeah.
it codified instructions and codified outputs as well, you get significantly better
Can you
results
give
out
us
of
an
these models
example?
as well. Um, yeah. So if you want the AI, like for example with our scripts, right? Before we kind of
Mhm.
trained it on the written scripts in English, said follow this script. Whereas now we give it, I won't go into too much detail, but essentially we give it like a codified version of that. Um, so it's like we need these are the inputs, bam, bam, bam. These are the outputs we need, and we
Yeah.
need these structured outputs. So OpenAI can do structured outputs and inputs. Um, Rather than just hoping, in natural language, can
It's
you
the
please
right
do this?
thing.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like we need this, 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 this,
Sort of
and
giving
we
it
need
some
it in this
structure to
format.
its responses, and these are the types of responses we're looking for. Pick the right one and given these types of inputs.
Exactly, exactly. But in a way that it's written in kind of codified, so it's not just like it's
Right.
much more precise basically. So it
I
it
see.
falls through, it falls through. It's a little, to give you an example. It's a little bit like, imagine trying to design a website via natural language. It'd be incredibly
Yeah.
tedious. Sorry, could you just move the that and we've all done it, but could you just move
Yeah.
that line up like 5 inches or 5 centimeters or whatever? Oh no, no,
Yeah.
down, and oh, I like the slightly blue, rather than just going, I need that exact blue, I need that exact blue, and
Yeah.
that needs to be three
Right there.
pixels from the top,
Yeah.
right there, 3 pixels from the top is much better than trying to go, it's kind of a little bit
Left a bit,
higher,
right a
a
bit.
little bit higher. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that's been the big thing that we've experienced, and we've got a lot of return on that. But generally, Gen AI, there's lots of ethical considerations. Everything we do is now hosted on our own servers. Obviously, doesn't go off those. Um, yeah, in general, I say we're getting there. It's very easy to be lulled. I do it all the time into a false sense of this is amazing, it can do anything. But then when it doesn't, it's so obvious and apparent. Um, it is basically just predicting the next words very well, because it understands the context of those words. So it's
Oh,
not just like predicting the next word; it's predicting the next word based on everything that's come before.
mm.
Um, does that make, yeah, I don't know if I can dive into that more, but essentially that's how it's doing it, because it understands the relationships between everything, right? So it's like basically it turns every piece of knowledge on the internet into a number, in a nutshell. It's a coordinate. So if there's a car has a coordinate, a dog has a coordinate. Those coordinates aren't very similar because a car and a dog aren't very similar. So it's like that would be like London and New York, not very
Yeah.
similar. But a cat and a dog would
Hmm.
have, or two, let's say two, like a cat and a kitten would have very
Yeah.
similar coordinates.
Yes,
So
I
that's how
see.
it's able to understand that they're close in what is called
Interesting.
latent space, without getting too complicated. But it understands they're
Oh, this
close.
is really
Uh,
interesting.
and yeah, it is cool. It's actually quite, it's relatively straightforward when you understand, when you kind of wrap your head around it. But then it's like, and
Mm.
then it understands, and then as you have a whole sentence, the cat jumps over the car, whatever. It all has like a coordinate in a nutshell.
Mm.
It all has a long coordinate. So then it can start to, you can find things in the coordinates, and you can be like, bam, that's that. But then you can kind of match how similar that whole block of text is to something else, and you can start to do that, and it works not dissimilar in images as well. So you have two kind of images, and it's like it basically gives the images every coordinates like kind of like a long number, basically, and
Yeah.
it's like this is a leaf, and that is a long number for a leaf. Let's say,
Mm.
to give an example, that's a long number for a leaf, and then I show you another leaf. Um, those numbers should be quite similar,
Right.
because, and that's how it goes. Oh, I'm looking at a leaf. right? Because it's like a number. It's similar to another number. Whereas if I showed you a car, if I showed the AI a car, it'd be like,
Could it be
that
like,
number is very different.
I was thinking like a genetic code almost, like a monkey and a human are going to be pretty close. So they're not too far, not too dissimilar, but
Well,
a amoeba and a human is going to be a very different place.
not yeah, exactly. Actually, very similar to that. It's like if an alien was going to come and you tried to explain a human and a monkey, they'd be like, okay, and then you're like, okay, look, I'm just going to show you the genetic code. There you go,
Yeah.
and they can see, oh, okay, now I can see how everything relates to everything else. Yeah, it's kind of like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. Interesting.
Anyway, so that's the gen. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we went off on a tangent. That's fine.
Yeah, no, we did. But that's yeah, that's
The
the
theme for all the other interviews to come as well. So I think it's
yeah, yeah. And look,
um,
we're all learning this, so it's all new. But then you got kind of the predictive side. So I think we've, yeah, we might be going on a little bit longer with this. So if you need to jump, shout. But
that's fine.
yeah,
Going.
you're good. You're good for time. Okay, we'll just carry
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
You always edit all this down, so it's a little bit more streamlined.
That's
But yeah,
yeah.
predictive AI. That's actually pretty well known. That's getting to a point now where it is delivering a lot of good kind of stuff. Um, that's largely used for kind of predicting things like forecasts and all that kind of stuff. But that's just looking at it's
Do you
looking at
utilize
data and using that to kind of. So say again.
have you have you utilized that at all in your business processes, Tom? Predictive side of things?
Not in Aduvo, not in Aduvo. So in machines for construction, we are doing wildly complicated stuff that I really barely understand if I'm completely honest. But like because we've got these robots that we need to be able to pick up. Like the first task we picked, arguably, which is a dumb task because it's actually quite complicated, is to build a wall. And within that, you think it's relatively straightforward, but you've got the robotics aside, you've got to be able to first of all look at a pile of bricks and go select the bricks. That's a challenge in itself. So first of all, it needs to understand what the environment is. It needs to understand that is actually a brick, and then it needs to be able to segment the brick, outline it, understand exactly where that is. And then it needs to be able to select the right brick rather than like the bottom one of a pile, because that would be dumb.
Yeah.
So it needs to
Yeah.
have lots of kind of cognition in that. And so that's all kind of that. And then once it's kind of done that, then you need to actually train it to actually go and pick that brick up. There's two ways you can do that. There's one which is kind of like you manually kind of program to do it. That's the problem with that is it's not very flexible. The other way is you train it. So you say, this is the outcome. We need the brick. We give it an objective. The objective is to pick up the brick in your hand.
Yeah.
And yeah, the kind of and yeah, the objective is to pick up the brick in your hand, and it then learns how to do that through trial and error. So it's like mess it up, good, etc. So
That didn't work. Try again. That didn't work. Try again. Like we learn.
exactly, yeah. So that's like the reinforcement learning. So actually we covered it off earlier. You've got supervised learning, unsupervised learning, which is where you just go and read everything, and then you've got just go and try it, which is the reinforcement learning, and then you kind of have a goal, and then how close you get to that goal, you either get penalized or you get rewarded. Um, so yeah, but
Stick.
that's been a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Excellent.
but it's also new. It's also new. All this stuff is like you're just learning constantly, which is super fun. But it's like, yeah,
Well, it's a great place to
it's like
be.
drinking from a fire hose. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Exactly.
Frustrating though. Frustrating though when you burn a lot of time on one thing and
Yeah.
then someone else launches a new model and solves it all. You're like, I
Oh,
just wasted like 2 months building all this out to try and solve a problem, and now you're telling me
yeah.
you've already solved it.
Just done
Great, thanks. Yeah,
it.
it is what it is.
Well, I mean, probably leads me on to the next question, which is, can you highlight some of the most exciting AI applications you've seen in the built environment, or maybe
Oh,
where it could go as well?
I think there's so much, honestly. I think I just yesterday I was just posting on my LinkedIn about Google's just applied an AI layer over their Google Maps to be able to indicate uh, how many solar panels you can have on all the buildings across cities and stuff. So it'll literally kind of showcase angles of the roof, how much sun they can get. they can map the sun 24/7. So it'll basically say who's a prime candidate for installing solar panels and things like that. Stuff like that is pretty cool. I think
That's
there's
really cool.
yeah, and I think there's a lot of obviously outside of the operations, on the operations side of stuff, I think there's to be honest, the scope to automate a lot of that kind of back office stuff. But the thing I'm really excited about in the built environment is is the opportunity to the impact it can have on planning and building spaces for humans to live in. I know why I said humans, that made it sound very creepy. People, for people to live in.
Where does the AI
Yeah.
live?
Yeah, look, I think I think we've made lots of mistakes historically. We made some
Mm,
great things as well, but I think lots of mistakes around building environments
mm.
that actually are good. And what I mean by good, I mean like stimulate interaction. I think we got to a point where we're quite lonely potentially as a society, especially since being locked down and all that kind of stuff. But I think our cities are not necessarily designed for us to promote that kind of engagement on a community level. I think often, they're designed around, for whatever reason, finance, etc., all that kind of stuff, uh, which is valid. That has to work out as well. But I think now with AI, there's an opportunity to be able to look at data patterns, how people actually live, how people want to live, how we want to, what are the goals we want to be setting, and kind of doing some interesting things like running simulations, right? So before we build stuff, which we used to have to just build stuff, now we can go, let's imagine this city, let's imagine we built this plan and then we put AI avatars, agents, whatever you want to do, running around the city,
Yeah.
and you see
What happened?
how do they interact, how do their lives, what happens, right? That kind of stuff would be really interesting because I think then we can start to kind of not engineer, that's the wrong way, but we can promote the kind of values, I guess, that we want to be achieving from the built environment. Because I think that's the built environment for me is that's we all have to live in these things. That's the thing that's really important to me, and I think making sure that works for us is the most important thing.
Well, and there's some real, another AI is obviously a really exciting development, but also how we're living and working and how cities are sort of utilized and that set for change post pandemic and lots of retail moving. You see the high street. I've walked down a few high streets recently, and there's loads of empty shops and stuff, and not enough
Yeah.
living space. So how do we utilize our city spaces and where historically everyone's been outside and been moving in, or over recent generations before that was different. Obviously, people were living in the cities. So how's that going to look, and how will AI impact that? Be very. I think there's a few things happening at the same time which are really exciting.
Yeah, yeah, and then you got like quantum computing and all this stuff is starting to speed up and all that. Like, yeah, it's happening fast. Yeah, the high street's really interesting one. Like, what is the future of that? What is that going to look like? Because yeah, if we just having those meeting places and those third places, I think are really critical still. But I don't think it's shops. Um, to be honest, I think there's a role for that, but I don't think it can't just be shops. Um, and it can't just be. I don't think it can just be pubs either because even the kids aren't doing that anymore. Apparently, they tell me.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
Restaurants and other living spaces, but co-working spaces, co-living spaces. I don't know. How does it all mix up? But
entertainment, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. There's got to be
yeah,
there's got to
definitely.
be some interesting stuff that AI unlocks with entertainment as well. I reckon the ability to create our own movies, or we're getting
Yeah,
close to it. Create our own movies, or like enter into like amazing computer
the
game
computer games.
worlds
Imagine the
that you
computer
can.
games. They're phenomenal now. It's almost like you're playing Indiana Jones. I was on my kids,
Yeah,
with AI involved in that, and it'd be crazy, couldn't it? But we
whole
digress.
worlds you can create. I think. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
I do. I have a question sort of related to the talent space, and you've sort of mentioned a couple of things there in terms of, the AI being able to, be the customer service person on the end of the phone helping people, AI to automate back office um, services and that sort of stuff. Does that mean AI is going to take all our jobs, Tom?
Uh, um, No, no, well, no, look, I think, um, I mean, you know, you got that, the Luddite problem, I guess, of, with every new technology, with every new technology, there is disruption, right? So if I was going to sit here and say, yeah, it's not gonna affect your job, not your specific job, but anyone's job, I would say that would be a wrong statement to make. It's gonna affect. There's gonna be people, um, that are whose roles are going to be significantly different, if not gone entirely in some cases. That being said, I do think it's going to open up a lot more opportunity. I think let's imagine a world where AI starts to, you know, and robotics start to do a lot of that stuff. I think the question is, um, I think we're going to start to see human labor valued a lot more actually than it is now, which is a good thing. I hope. I'm optimistic. There's obviously risks with it all, but I think, you know, if you get a human person serving you, it's because, well, let me wind back. I think the exciting thing for me with AI is that we might be able to get to a world where I am not working because I have to work, and I'm not working because I have to work in order, you know, to survive or to pay my bills or because, all that kind of stuff. I'm working because actually I enjoy and I get value from doing that, and I'm doing it with people I enjoy doing it with, and yeah, I'm doing something that derives value. I'm doing it for me, and I think that's hopefully the world that we're going to be seeing. You know, people will be working in a restaurant, let's say, because they want to be there because actually it's a rewarding job to make food for people and to kind of make sure people are happy. Um, yeah, and interaction and providing those spaces for people. I think there's a huge value in that. But I think at the moment, lots of people are doing that job, don't really want to be there, let's be honest. They're doing it for the paycheck. And I think
Mhm.
once that flips, people are going to have a lot, we're going to have a lot better. I'm going to enjoy going to the restaurant more because I know that person wants to be there and that person is there by choice. And you do you know what I mean? Like we start
Yeah,
to
yeah,
see things changing. So I don't think we'll be without roles. I think it'll open up. I think hospitality is going to boom in that world because that's what people are going to want to be doing with their time. Education is going to be
Mhm.
booming. I genuinely think we're going to lose that idea of trying to train up for exams, like we have. You know, people are trying to get qualifications. They go to uni to get qualifications. That's not a thing. I think
Yeah.
people are going to go to learn, to expand their minds. And I think they're going to want that a lot more. I think we're going to be spending most of our time learning things, being educated, like understanding, refining a craft, I think, over doing the repetitive jobs that we have been done 9 to 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. So it's freeing us up from those mundane tasks that are repetitive and we don't need to continually do. We know how to do it. We don't need to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And almost be drawn more towards, well, the human part of any interaction is going to be highly valued, and not by the person engaging in that or purchasing that in that respect, if it's that type of interaction, but also for the person who's delivering that service. We'll all be drawn towards those more human, sort of attributes, or not attributes, sort of requirements or needs. I mean, look, obviously, a million, well, 100,000 years of evolution or whatever, those that need of interaction and community and all that sort of stuff, which drives us as people, is not going to go away. And so that it's always going to be there. So how AI helps facilitate that sort of interaction and that need, because it's not, well, in some respects it could, I can imagine a few people calling for their I've even seen it, I've read about it, but you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
their AI friend online or whatever, there were some experiments with that. And they were like, no, they're my best mate. Don't stop.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But that's the
Yeah, I think that's a that's a
different thing.
that's a yeah, that's yeah, that's
But
an interesting question. I think that it's a bit,
is that a symptom
is that a
of
symptom of what?
people being isolated and that sort of stuff? And their AI there is to help
I
them.
think it's a society. Yeah, I think it's a society. Probably saying something about society and how we've structured it. I think than and maybe, uh, yeah. I don't. with those kind of things, there's always exceptions. And there's always kind of, I don't want to comment on, I think it'd be wrong for me to comment on specific examples. It's hard to know whether these people have mental, how their mental health issue is, etc., etc. It's very hard to know, and there's always going to be sensationalism in the media that's like, look, this chatbot has done X, Y, Z, and you're like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
there's probably a lot more nuance to those kind of situations.
Of
But I think,
course.
but I think I also just want to say your point there about kind of the mundane and stuff. There is beauty in the mundane, and there is beauty in kind of the I think humans as well we would be in a bad place if all we did was just live a life of luxury. I think the
Mhm.
suffering, certainly the suffering of what I do, all those challenges that you have to cross every day with it, that's the beautiful part of it. And that's why you go to the gym as well. Like that suffering as well stimulates a sense of achievement at the end of it. So I think we should be
But
careful of not getting comfortable and
if you're
still
not,
like
if you're,
pushing ourselves, right?
yeah, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing, right? You need to be in that zone where you
Exactly
go, this
right.
is me, or whatever. I need to step up, or I'm challenged. And that's where you feel a lot of reward. Um, Fantastic. And I suppose we're probably out of time here now, Tom. It's been great chatting, but is there any sort of advice you would give to people who are looking to explore and expand their use of AI within the built environment? Maybe something just to wrap it up, some tips for those out there. You've utilized it a lot.
Yeah, no, look, I think uh just start. That's stupid. Just start. Like just do it, and just like, no, I don't want to say lean in because that's a credible thing, but look, you might not know anything about it. But chat, there are free tools like ChatGPT. Just start there. Don't put any client data or anything in, but just start having a chat and ask it how it works. And maybe if you're curious, so I'd say that my single piece of advice, like probably just generally outside of this as well, is like just be curious, because the more questions that you ask, um, the more interesting stuff becomes actually, and the more I think the more value I've started to get from life and just in general and stuff, because you start to, yeah, and I think that's the same thing with AI. The more questions that you ask, the more you read about it, the more you understand, the more you kind of dive into it, the more interesting it becomes, and the more passion like you get in it. And then when something becomes a passion, it's very easy. Then you're like, okay, well, I'm into this, so I want to read about this, I want to do this, blah blah blah. So it's not about like finding your passion, it's about growing that. And I think that's the advice I would give. Give it a go, and just ask questions. If you're interested, go in that direction. If you're not, then maybe go in a different direction, or whatever. But it's not particularly complex. I think you'll wrap your head around it. Um, and just try it, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Really, I think um, you're probably not going to get sued as long as it's not live. So I think
Ah,
obviously be careful what you put
okay.
into production or you expose your customers to,
Yes.
but there's always
Test it
risks. There's
well.
always things like with everything in life. Yeah,
Yeah.
test it well, but before that point, before you get to that point, there's so much of good learning and good stuff you can have. Um, that isn't going to get you sued. So focus on that, start there, and then you can sort out the rest
Yes.
later.
Well, exactly. And if you don't, I think if you're not using it, we talked a bit about jobs and maybe businesses as well. I think if you're not a business or an individual who's utilizing AI and maximizing it and learning about it, you'll have your job taken by a human with AI, you know, or a company that is utilizing AI to be far more productive and do a lot more stuff. So I think if you don't get involved quickly, that's a risk.
I think that's the honest that is the honest thing. It's kind of you're going to see companies. I think you'll start to see companies that are winning and doing well will insist on using AI in their workflows. And
Mm.
if you're not, you don't understand it, or you kind of do that, then you're probably not going to be able to join those companies. And then that is when your careers would suffer, or you'd struggle to do it. I think we're a long way off right now. The point where you're going to have completely automated companies, maybe in certain edge cases, that's going to start coming in, but Yeah, I always think get as close to other people, and there's another thing as well. Just get as close to other people as possible, because those are the jobs that are unlikely to go. Right?
Mm.
If your job is, like your job, for example, lots of your job is interacting with people, and I think that's not going to go anywhere soon. So I think that those human relationships become more important in a world of AI.
Yes, I totally agree. It's that human interaction. Like we said earlier, it's that human interaction, those human qualities that you won't be able to, that will have like compassion and empathy, genuine compassion and empathy, not artificial. If there's an AI saying that to me, I'm like, meh, you know,
Yeah,
it,
exactly. Because there's no emotion. It's just saying the words, but
there's
no
no
actual emotions being felt. Yeah,
exactly, and it's those things that are going to be really valuable. But look, Tom, thanks so much for joining
that
me
was awesome,
today.
man.
Thanks
It's
for
fun. Sorry, I waffled a
thanks.
bit there, probably.
No, no, it's fantastic. I love our conversations, and thanks for partnering, collaborating with me on this to do these interviews because they've been brilliant. And like everyone watching, watch out because there's more to come, and there's some really good ones in there. So yeah, and thank you,
That's
Tom.
great.
Thanks very much.
So next week, you, yeah?
Yes.
We do
Maybe not.
we're doing you, okay?
Okay, maybe.
Okay. Cool. Right, cheers, mate.
Fantastic. Cheers, Tom.